The room smelled of ink and ambition. A dozen men sat around an oak table, their faces flickering under candlelight. Maps were unfurled, battle plans whispered. Yet, in the farthest corner, one man remained silent. His name, Ricardo, a lowly scribe, invisible among kings and generals. No one suspected he held the true power in that room. Because while the others flaunted their intentions, swinging their words like swords, Ricardo concealed his like a dagger, hidden beneath silk. They argued over strategies, revealing every thought, every scheme. And Ricardo, he listened, he learned, and when the time was right, he struck. This is the essence of the third law of power: conceal your intentions. And if you think deception is only for villains, think again. From ancient warlords to Wall Street titans, the most powerful figures in history have mastered the art of misdirection. Because the moment someone knows your true plans, they can block you, undermine you, even destroy you. But if you mask your intentions, you control the game. In this video, we'll unravel the hidden power of secrecy, why revealing too much makes you weak, how history's greatest manipulators use deception to rise, and the brutal consequences of ignoring this law. But first, let's go back in time, where one man's failure to conceal his intentions led to one of history's most infamous betrayals. Let's step into the opulent courts of Renaissance Italy, a world of whispered plots, shifting alliances, and sudden betrayals. This is where our cautionary tale begins, with a man who ignored the third law of power. His name was Francesco de' Pazzi. The Pazzi family was one of Florence's wealthiest dynasties, but there was just one problem. They weren't the Medici. The Medici ruled the city with charm, influence, and most dangerously, intelligence. Lorenzo de' Medici, Lorenzo the Magnificent, wasn't just a ruler, he was a master strategist, a man who could see an enemy's moves before they made them. Francesco, desperate to overthrow the Medicis, gathered conspirators. He had power, he had money, and he had a plan. But what he didn't have was secrecy. Unlike Lorenzo, who played his cards close, Francesco spoke too freely. He made deals in broad daylight. He hinted at his ambitions. He allowed whispers of rebellion to circulate through Florence. And Lorenzo, he listened. He watched. The morning of the assassination attempt arrived. Francesco and his men moved into place, daggers hidden beneath their cloaks. The target, Lorenzo and his brother, Giuliano. But as Francesco raised his blade, Lorenzo was already turning. He had anticipated the strike. Giuliano was killed, but Lorenzo escaped, rallying the people against the conspirators. Within hours, the Pazzi family's power was gone, their name erased from history, and Francesco, he was hanged from the very windows of the Florence Cathedral, his body swinging as a warning to all who fail to keep their ambitions hidden. This is the price of transparency in a world of power, the illusion of honesty. Now, some might say, but isn't honesty a virtue? Doesn't transparency build trust? Yes, in a world of fairy tales, but in reality, too much honesty is a liability. Consider poker. The moment your opponents read your hand, you've lost. Power works the same way. If people know your next move, they can counter it, outmaneuver you, even destroy you before you begin. This is why the world's greatest strategists, from business moguls to military leaders, never reveal their full intentions. They mislead, they feint, they let others believe what they want. Because deception isn't just about lying, it's about control. Take Steve Jobs, for example. When Apple was developing the iPhone, Jobs didn't announce his plans to revolutionize the phone industry. Instead, he downplayed Apple's interest in mobile technology. Competitors remained unaware until it was too late. By the time they reacted, the iPhone had already reshaped the market. Or consider Elon Musk. His companies are built on bold visions, but his true strategies remain obscured. He teases ideas, misdirects the media, and while everyone is focused on one thing, he's building something else entirely. His unpredictability is his power. The art of strategic secrecy. So how do you apply this in your own life? Here's the key. Concealing your intentions doesn't mean never speaking. It means never speaking carelessly. 1. Keep people guessing. Instead of stating your full plan, give partial truths. Let them see just enough to believe they understand, but never the full picture. A boss, a rival, or even a friend cannot sabotage what they do not fully grasp. 2. Use decoys, create diversions. Let people focus on something irrelevant while your real work happens in the shadows. The best chess players bait their opponents into making the wrong move. Life is no different. 3. Listen more, speak less. The more you talk, the more ammunition you give others. Learn to be comfortable with silence. Let others reveal themselves first. Fourth, control perception. If people believe you are predictable, harmless, or incapable, they won't see you coming when you strike. Underestimation is a weapon. History is filled with those who mastered these principles and those who ignored them. The difference: those who played the game wisely thrived. Those who didn't, their names became warnings. But there's still one final lesson, one that separates those who conceal their intentions wisely from those who become mere deceivers. Because deception is a double-edged sword, and if used incorrectly, it can turn against you. That's where we go next. The final act, where we reveal the true danger of this law and the one mistake that can cost you everything. There's a moment, a razor-thin line, where deception turns from a weapon into a curse, where the power of secrecy collapses under its own weight. And no story captures this downfall better than that of Richard Nixon. Nixon was a master of concealment. He played politics like a grand chessboard, keeping his enemies in the dark while making moves in silence. In 1972, when the Watergate scandal began, a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, it was a small, manageable issue. Nixon could have distanced himself. He could have let it die in the shadows. But he did the opposite. He chose deception over strategy. Instead of letting silence work in his favor, he overplayed his secrecy, orchestrating cover-ups, erasing evidence, and lying to the public. Each move only deepened the suspicion. And here's where he made the fatal mistake. When you conceal too much, you stop controlling the game. The game starts controlling you. By the time the truth surfaced, Nixon was no longer in power. He was a disgraced figure, forced to resign as the world watched. The very secrecy that had once elevated him now buried him. The rule of balance. So, what's the lesson? If concealing your intentions is a source of power, why did Nixon fall? Because deception, like fire, must be controlled. Use too little and you expose yourself. Use too much and you suffocate in your own smoke. The key is balance. 1. Deception must serve strategy, not ego. If secrecy becomes a reflex instead of a tool, you lose perspective. Every great strategist, whether in politics, business, or war, knows when to reveal just enough to maintain trust. 2. Never lie when silence will do. The moment you fabricate elaborate falsehoods, you give others a thread to pull. A web of lies collapses the moment one strand is cut. But silence? Silence is unbreakable. 3. Leave an escape route. If your entire plan depends on secrecy, you have no fallback when it fails. The smartest leaders always have a secondary strategy, a way to pivot if the truth comes out. 4. Let others deceive themselves. The most powerful misdirection isn't telling lies, it's allowing people to believe what they already assume. Let their own expectations blind them, while you stay 3 steps ahead. The final takeaway. The third law of power is not about lying. It's not about manipulation for the sake of it. It's about control, about knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to let others believe what they want. Francesco de Pazzi failed because he was too open. Nixon failed because he was too closed. But those who walk the middle path, they don't just survive, they rule. So the next time you have a goal, whether it's in your career, your relationships, or your ambitions, ask yourself, do they really need to know what I'm planning? Or would it be more powerful to let them wonder? Because in the game of power, the greatest advantage is simple. What they don't know, they can't stop. Subscribe to the channel for masterpiece summaries of masterpiece books. Not interested in useless things.